Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and a warm welcome to the second day of this year's Global Forum on Digital Security for Prosperity, kindly hosted by the Israeli government on this virtual format. My name is András. Hlásc. I'm Vice President of the Committee on Digital Economy Policy, CDEP of the OECD. Yesterday, there seemed to be a general agreement that digital transformation accelerated by the coronavirus pandemic has created the inevitable need to be constantly connected, thus exposing us to more cyber threats and as a consequence making us and our devices highly vulnerable. Therefore, we need to find solutions and set standards, both globally, nationally, and locally, and we have to do this jointly through cooperations with all stakeholders involved. So at the end of the day, it is our common interest to be more secure. The COVID-19 crisis further increased the pressure on governments to rapidly develop and deploy new digital tools, including e-government services like paying taxes or obtaining administrative documents, things that citizens were often unable to access personally due to strict sanitary measures. The keynote session of today will discuss the challenges and lessons learned during the COVID-19 crisis, and our speaker will share his thoughts on this. At the same time, please do not forget to ask questions throughout the session, should you have any to ask to our speaker. I would like to welcome Amit Ashkenazi, head of the legal department of the Israeli National Cyber Directorate, and ask his views on this topic. Amit, thank you very much for being here today with us, and I look forward to listening to you. Thank you.
So when we looked at the situation of COVID-19, we understood that our challenges dealing with digital risk management on a daily basis before COVID-19 became instantaneously a lot more serious. Because we know that the challenges basically to digital transformation in public sectors services relies on the need to look at the way that ICT innovation changes organizational behavior. And one of the issues that we've looked at is how public sector organizations adapt to the introduction of digital services. And the usual problem with this issue is that the ICT is seen as something led by the technical people and not always accompanied by management attention. Without management attention, digital transformation cannot happen. COVID-19 measures that affected the possibility to supply the usual brick and mortar public services got immediately management attention. And so we needed to see how management attention and management, I would say, requirement for hyperscale digital transformation do not create excessive digital risk. And this was the challenge that we saw coming as the agency in charge of making sure that digital services are supplied in a secure and safe manner.
Why do you think that this problem has happened, and how did COVID-19 even more accelerated on this issue?
So again, digital transformation and embracing of digital technologies is an organizational risk for any organization, and in the public sector even more so, because the public sector, and recall I am the legal advisor, needs to work according to the rule of law because it supplies essential public services which are important to the population. And therefore, we need to look at how we maintain the same level of accountability to the public for the same process that we have done in the real world. So if we need to check people's identity so that they don't get other people's allowances or tax refunds, it's still important to do this in the digital world. And if we are a safekeeper of important public documents for land registrars, for wills, etc., then this duty must be maintained in the digital sphere as well. But the immediate stopping of the normal life that we knew required us to take all of these intellectual challenges all at once. And so the COVID-19 put a lot of pressure on management and policymakers to take these procedures, which have been in the making for a long time, in a very speedy way. And other forces within the government had a lot of projects waiting for digital reforms, saw this as an opportunity to carry out these digital reforms. So we see the strain in the station getting fueled up, getting ready to go very, very fast. And as the National Cyber Directorate, we were asking ourselves, how can we make sure that it does not go off the track when it leaves the station?
One thing that really captured my attention is the fact that, Israel is being very good in security, yet there are some misalignments when it comes to the public sector security. Could you please elaborate a bit on that?
So basically, I think that the Israeli public service is no different than other Western public services in the sense that the challenges in digital transformation are the same. We do have an advantage that was utilized in this crisis, is that we have a central e-government unit which serves as a central infrastructure to supply services, and it has built a resilient and scalable infrastructure that was offered to many ministries, but many of the ministries did not harness this to the full potential. So this, on the one hand, is a strength. On the other hand, at the end of the day, an infrastructure is just an infrastructure. And as we know in cloud responsibility, this requires joint responsibility from the top management. So what we did during this time was that we tried to get management attention. This happened in two manners. The first thing that was done was that we introduced the concept, which is really not, I would say, not novel to the participants of the OECD discussions on digital risk management, of an accountability triangle. So basically, this triangle includes the Director General of the agency in charge of the public service, and obviously the CIO is the guy that is or the woman, many times in Israel, that is in charge of delivering the service, but also the legal advisor as the one that is in charge of making sure that risk management has been taken care of. And so this accountability triangle was deployed by issuing letters by our Director General to the Director Generals of all the ministries, the head of the robustness unit, which was in charge of the professional qualifications and knowledge, to the professional cybersecurity units in the ministries, and I sent a letter to all of the legal advisors reminding them of their responsibility in making sure that the Director General takes risk management as part of the process. And that's how we added, if you like, another cart or another to this train going out of the station, making sure that when it's going this very fast digital transformation, risk management is not left at the station. And I can share with you that there were discussions within the executive branch, because the digital security and risk management were seen sometimes as an impediment. And we had negotiations about the right level of requirements for risk management. And the interesting thing was that when the government introduced a speedy legislation to enable digital transformation, the Ministry of Justice, an omnibus bill, and this came to Parliament, the parliamentarians themselves asked for us to participate in the discussions to make sure that once they give this mandate for hyper-speed digital transformation of digital services, if you like a COVID-19 e-government act, digital risk is part of the legislation. And we had, as a result of that, a clause in this law which was passed, which requires agency heads to have a documented risk management procedure, which means that we succeeded in getting buy-in from the top. So the whole concept is that on the one hand, we have central e-government supplying the services so that we can do this digital transformation. But we took the discussion, hopefully, from, if you like, the IT department and brought it to the boardroom of the Director General that has to, at least formally, sign off on the service. And as you can imagine, this is not an easy procedure, as any type of transformation is is not simple, but it does raise the place of cybersecurity or digital security to where it should be.
It's fantastic to hear that basically digital transformation also helped us to transform other approaches within and around this issue. And it's I think that it's very exemplary to hear what your approach was and how it could further elaborate on why digital transformation is important, and cybersecurity is not just one department's issue, but it's the role and tasks of all. And my question is with that is, do you think that now, based on this approach, people in general understand risk management better, and also, do you think that now it's not only IT department that they are expecting the answers from?
So I think that one thing that was very apparent in the public discourse about the digital element of this crisis and its importance is that people became very, very aware of this element. I recall a discussion done over this type of platform with the senior colleagues in the Ministry of Justice, and they were saying, well, what can go wrong? This is just a digital platform. We don't care about anything going on. This was one of the first discussions going on this platform. And then later, we had a public discussion about interception of Zoom conversations, and all of a sudden these people felt it very real. That the risk was not a theoretical thing done by other professionals. And so from a personal experience point of view, I think people are now more aware. And you know that we need this for managers to be aware of what they know, because public sector managers probably are not chosen because of their experience in digital security or in risk management, but rather in general public sector management, in policy making, in their knowledge of how the public sector works, in their trust with the minister, etc. So the challenge for us as the digital security experts is to empower them with this layer of digital security risk management. So I think that given the reliance on digital infrastructures, digital risk management is in a better place than it was a year ago, in the sense that it is, as you posed in the question, top management is a lot more aware. And again, one of the challenges is that private sector risk management may have this risk management discussion more in its bloodstream, if you like, because in many areas, risk management is part of management, for instance, financial sector, etc. Whereas in the public sector management, this may not always be the main, if you like, currency of management. And we have here a cultural element that we need. And the other thing that we succeeded in doing in this legislation is integrating digital risk management as part of the general substantive analysis that was needed when the digital transformation takes place. So what do I mean by substantive? This is a bit legalistic, but what I mean to say is that when you take a brick and mortar process and take it to the digital world, the digital lawyers talk about the need for functional equivalence. So you need to make sure that whatever the digital process is, it serves the same purposes in the digital world as in the physical world, and nothing is lost in the transformation. And sometimes this is a very important step. So what we did is harnessed or integrated the technical digital security risk management within that process, so that once digital transformation takes place, we make sure that it is available and secure and safe. Otherwise, the whole transformation is not really successful.
I mean, and it's very important what you just said for the second part. But before I would get to that, or maybe we can even join these two remarks that you just made. And when I asked you, so do you feel that now management in general in the public sector, on one hand, now not just has the awareness, but also has the responsibility and is willing to take the responsibility and the risk ownership? And on the other hand, what is interesting, what you said is that when it comes to the private sector, that do they really understand that while at the same time there's a lot to learn from the private sector when it comes to digital security management, at the same time we always need to be aware of the differences.
Exactly. So two things. I think that from a legal point of view, the obligations that apply to a agency head in the public sector are different from his colleague in the private sector. So in the private sector, we've seen the development of what I call the law of the terms of use. So this is actually these contracts written by the service provider, and he sets what are the rules of the game of the relationship. Whereas in the public sector, this is scrutinized by public law, which requires the public agency to be reasonable, not to discriminate, etc., substantive principles. So as the starting point, the public sector manager has more legal obligations. This goes to your second question. This is the difference. On the other hand, the private sector manager will probably have an easier time in doing adoption of digital technologies because he's a private sector manager and he can do organizational changes and procedures, and it's not something that is either legislated or mandated by a formal procedure, and it's a part of the, I would say, management toolset. And I will not be as optimistic as maybe your first question alluded to. We still have a lot of work in the National Cyber Directorate to empower the cybersecurity professionals within the ministries doing the work on the ground to make sure that they are taken as part of the decision-making processes. And the government ministries in Israel are not one size. So in some ministries, you see a lot of attention and an important place to the cybersecurity professional, meaning that basically we can be in a better place. In other areas, you need to empower these people so that management carries out its responsibilities. And what we did was harness the legal responsibilities through the law, the parliament actually, so that to make sure that at least from the legal point of view, this is taken care of. As you can imagine, there is another side to this discussion, which is the resources. So we need to take into account when doing digital transformation that we need to have some resources not only to do the digital transformation, but also to secure it. And this is sometimes overlooked. And so it's not only a legal thing, it's also a budgetary thing, and we need to have the central budgeting, if you like, organizations aware of this risk and hopefully share our view, or at least negotiate with us the view of what is the risk management profile.
There are questions coming in already from the audience, Amit, and I would like to read out one for you that came from you, who's asking how to balance risk identification between risk and from now known areas and emerging new type risks. And he also would like to know how to balance risk management and taking risks to create new types of services.
Yeah, so the way that we looked at it is a heavy reliance during this time on central infrastructures. So we assumed that the most, the heavy duty role of understanding and mitigating new risks, the type that the average cybersecurity professional will not look at, is the role of a central infrastructure. So this is the role for the central establishment, the National Cyber Directorate. This is what we do. And from the supply side, if you like, the role of this e-government unit, which is a critical infrastructure in Israel. So it is overlooked by the INCD directly to make sure that its services are protected. So there is no bulletproof type of solution, but we thought that the way to mitigate the novel risk is to rely as much as possible on a central infrastructure which has very, very developed risk management and technical abilities to locate risks and mitigate them, and then leave some of the leave some of the more high-end stuff again to the central infrastructure, not rely on the ministries either.
I mean, I would like to ask, there will be more questions to come, but I would like to ask something because you mentioned the private sector, obviously, and what the lessons there can be learned. But at the same time, we know that there is a lot to learn from other countries as well. And, the exchange between the governments. And that's why, for example, we need these cyber communities as what we see even here at the Global Forum. How do you think that this can help countries like your government as well in tackling these issues and even maybe making it better?
So basically, the issue of using the cloud and cloud services is quite important, because what cloud offers from the supply side is agile frameworks that enable us to do a lot more in a better and more efficient manner. And the cloud services also enable us to jump over what we know in information security as legacy systems. So these are old systems that didn't have security planned in them. And when you connect them to the internet, you have a lot of risk. So moving to the cloud is quite important. And I think this is a common theme that we're seeing. Now, again, this comes to the role of the cyber security, the digital security agency, and central government, and the role of the ministries. In this discussion, what we've seen in Israel, and I think in other places as well, is that we are trying to create a secure cloud infrastructure for the government, and then giving out the recommendations, instructions on how the government should use this cloud infrastructure. And I think this theme is very strong both in the European Union's public service move to the cloud, and we've recently seen it from the United States President executive order as part of mitigating cyber risk. So cloud infrastructures, and on the other side of this, cloud security is a key issue. And if as a community we can create more trust and share knowledge about how the cloud can be utilized for these uses, this is obviously quite important, because as you know, clouds are not a domestic phenomenon in general. So it requires the community to discuss how we use this responsibly.
I invite the audience to feel free to ask a question through the chat from Amit. Please use this chance to hear his insights on your questions, your concerns. When it comes to the next maybe half a year, 1 year, what do you think within Israel will be maybe the biggest tasks that you have to cover?
So I think that one of the big challenges and big opportunities that we're looking at this sphere is taking this discussion which we developed for COVID and applying it to an expected important move by the Israeli government public service in moving to the cloud. So a big maneuver led by our Ministry of Finance in a tender for the purchase of cloud services from a public cloud for Israeli public services. And this is something which hopefully will even make the digital transformation even more rapid. And with it, we need to make sure that it is done in a secure and safe manner so that it's done correctly. And when you look at the more advanced issues of cloud security, doing incident response in the cloud, etc., these are the more advanced issues. I think this will be one of the main challenges in which the Israeli government, and specifically the public service cybersecurity community, will need to work together to deal with this challenge and to harness the opportunities. And when you think about the role of cloud infrastructure for the deployment of artificial intelligence, this becomes even more important, because we understand that the cloud platforms will not only enable us to make the present services better, but also to develop new type of applications which are quite important. So this, I think, is a strategic move, which a lot of agencies in Israel, led by the Ministry of the Treasury, but ourselves and others, is deploying, and we need to do it right to succeed.
We see it in other sectors, like, for example, in the SMEs, that once the COVID-19 is over, the threat of the COVID-19 is over, companies tend to lay back a bit and basically lose their awareness on digitalization and digital security. Whereas, for example, we know that with digital transformation, cybersecurity and cyber threat will be always there as an issue. Do you think that this is the best way to keep up the awareness and make people understand that this is an ever-existing issue that we have to be aware of?
I think that the last year has raised the awareness, and I think that it's here to stay. I mean, from what I see, some of these investments that were made by the private sector, including by SMEs, were not only short-term, or it would be too simplistic to think that this is a short-term transformation. Obviously, the same type of discussion that we are having now, reflecting on public service, is taken in many boards of directors in the private sector, looking at the lessons learned and where is the middle ground between hyperscale digital transformation with no physical presence and complete physical presence. And I think that the recent events that we've seen in large-scale attacks on infrastructures are very worrying to SMEs, and I think they will stay vigilant. Of course, the constant role of the public sector, and this is where the OECD discussions are important, is how do we support the efforts taken by the market players, both on the supply side and the SME demand side, as you have mentioned, so that these are efficient, because we are aware that businesses need to make money. And the risk management is part of that, but it's not the main core. They weren't set up for risk management. They were set up to make a profit to the shareholders. So we need to find the correct balance, and I think the role of the National Cyber Directorate and the discussions with the OECD, learning from other countries, is where is the sweet spot? Where is the place where we take care of the risk, but we don't put a heavier burden on SMEs and other businesses that need to cope.
And in your opinion, this is where the international community, this is where OECD could help you the most?
Yeah, I think that the OECD, the way that the OECD analyzes, if you like, the markets in which these transactions take place, and where governments can assist the markets to get a better, socially efficient result is super important, because these are global markets. We're talking about technology flows across the globe. This is what digital is all about. And so you don't want to do maneuvers which will destabilize, or I would say negatively affect the way that people use digital technologies. On the other hand, we have a responsibility to our citizens and consumers that businesses supply digital services accountably. And this goes to them taking note of the risk and how they can mitigate it. So this is an important place for the OECD. I will mention just the recent work done by the OECD on vulnerability management. The analysis is super important to look at what type of role the government can have in dealing with vulnerabilities, which is something that we have learned to live with as a byproduct of the software industry. So these are important analysis in order to mitigate the risk.
And also, as you mentioned, standards that are helping both the public and the private sector. I will check the Q&A if there are any other questions that should be that are raised to Amit. For the moment, I don't see any. And actually, we are getting close to the end of our session as well. Amit, is there anything before I would conclude? Is there anything that you think that you would like to share with us as a final remark?
I think that one of the main differences in this digital transformation regarding the other times is the importance of a public sector institution, the National Cyber Directorate, which is which is in charge of making sure that these types of discussions take place and bring the professional and legal and the risk management discourse to the government table. So I think that this is something that we need to take note of, that we need these types of institutions that look at this, because we cannot count on other organizations to take note of these considerations if someone is not, if you like, nudging or reminding them of the both a value type legal obligations and the technical ways to carry out these obligations.
Thank you very much once again, Amit, for your highly valuable insights and important remarks that you shared with us today. And I would like to also thank the audience for staying with us. With this, I would like to conclude today's session, keynote session, and I wish you a wonderful day, and please stay tuned for the next session on increasing cyber resilience in the private sector, starting in about 30 minutes time. So thank you and bye.
Thank you.